Hi, I'm Paul. Welcome to my messy workshop. Well, it's still getting close to the holidays, so I decided to come up with another project for the holidays. We got some graph paper out and I drew this star, and I'm going to make a tree topper out of it. And I just drew it out on some graph paper, and I took a copy of it, took a couple pieces of 1/8 inch plywood, taped it up with blue tape, and I taped a copy of the pattern to the wood. I could cut this over on my bandsaw, but I've got a rough blade in it now. It's a ripping blade, and I don't feel like changing the blades. I don't like using, I mean, the bandsaw is a good tool, don't get me wrong, but I'm more comfortable with my scroll saw than I am the bandsaw for intricate cuts. So I'm going to go to my scroll saw and I'm going to cut this out. So follow along. Well, I've put a new blade in my scroll saw. I've got my pattern all set to go. So let's get it cut out. Well, I've got my piece cut out. I need to take the pattern off of it. I'll get the blue tape all off of it, and I'll be right back and I'll get it sanded. Well, I've got my pattern all off it and the blue tape all off of it. I've got some 220 sandpaper, and I'm just going to take my piece of wood and slightly sand it. The blade I used is a reverse tooth, skip tooth blade. It does a really nice job of cutting. I have very few fuzzies to take care of, very few spots to touch up. I think I will go and just take a piece of sandpaper and sand these sharp points down just a little bit so that they don't break or smush down or anything. But we've got it all cut out. Now it's on to the next step. Well, now that the star is all cut out, sanded, and it's good to go, we need a way to attach it to the tree. So what I did is I took some 14 gauge copper wire. This is just the ground wire out of some Romex, and I twisted it around a pill bottle. Just twisted it around there, and then after I got it twisted, I just went through and I tightened it up into kind of a conical shape to where it's bigger down here than it is at the top. From the bottom, I've got a piece sticking up in the air, and what I'm going to do is on the back of this ornament, I'm going to cut a groove with a chisel, and I'm going to epoxy that piece of wire right to the back of the ornament. So I'll show you how I'm going to do that next. What I've done is on the back of my star, I held my piece in place to see where it was going to go, and I marked the top and the bottom of where that's going to get epoxied in place. So it's going to end up just about like that. The reason I'm putting it where it's at is that the star is wide enough down here to hide this coil. So now what I'll do is I'll just take a razor knife and I'll cut down through there, just make a straight line for the length of it, and then I'll go through and I'll cut on an angle both sides and just make a little trough through there, and I'll be back when I have that done. Well, I ended up having to take a chisel to help cut out that little slot, and it's just deep enough for the wire to sit down in there. See if I can get a good picture of it here. There we go. The wire sits right down in there, and then I'll fill that hole with epoxy. There's how it looks. I'll fill that with epoxy, set that wire in it, tape it off, and leave it to dry. After it dries, then we'll go ahead and I'll show you how we're going to finish it. Well, we've had a major fail. The copper wire did not epoxy well to the back of the star. And in 2020 hindsight, that probably wasn't the best way to attach it. So what I'm going to do now is scrape off all this epoxy that's on there and on my piece of copper. And I think I'll take a little piece of wood, drill a hole in it that my copper will fit in, glue that to the back of my star, and then put the copper wire up in the hole with some epoxy. So I'll be back after I get the epoxy off the back of the star. Well, I made a little piece to glue on the back of my star. I got all the epoxy off the back of the star. And I made it this long. I drilled a little hole in the bottom of it. That's the size of the wire that I want to put up in there. And the only reason I made it this long is to cover up the back, the groove that I made in the back of the star. It could have been a lot shorter, but I got that ugly groove there, so I figured I might as well close that whole thing, or cover that whole thing up. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this to the back of the star now, and then from there we'll epoxy the wire up. Actually, I'm going to glue this on the back of the star, I'm going to paint the star, and then when I get it all painted with glitter paint, then I'm going to put the wire in the hole. So I'll be back in a minute. There's my little piece of wood glued onto the back of the star. So after the glue dries, I'm going to go ahead and paint it with glitter paint, and after I get that done, I'll be back. Well, the project's done. There's the star with a couple coats of Rust-Oleum glitter paint. Came out quite nice. There's the little board or piece of wood I added to the back. Now, this is the piece of copper that I coiled up, and you can see the little piece sticking out here, and that goes in the hole on the bottom of this little piece of wood. Then this coil of copper goes right over the top branch of your tree, and because this copper is nice and soft and easy to bend, you can make these rings tighter if you need to, or loosen them up a little bit, or wrap it around something. One way or another, it'll fit the top of the tree and it'll hold on really well. Well, I'm glad you stayed for the video. If you would, please subscribe if you haven't already. That way you get notification of all the new videos that I put out. Also, you can leave a comment. I like reading the comments, and I try and answer all of them. You could give me a thumbs up, I'd really appreciate that. Or if you think somebody else might be interested in this video, you could share it with them. Well, thanks again for watching my video, and Merry Christmas to everyone.